Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Cotton Grower Magazine's Cotton Companion Podcast. I'm Jim Stedman, editor of Cotton Grower, and joining me as always is my good friend and colleague, Beck Barnes. Now, Beck, as we're recording this, it appears winter's trying to give us at least one more blast before field work traditionally starts here in the Mid-South.
Yeah. Oh boy, I'm well aware. For our listeners' sake, for our farmers' sake, whatever they need moisture in the ground, I hope they get snow. If they're itching and ready to get out in the field and do work, I hope they don't get any snow. For my sake, man, I just had child was out of school for Valentine's Day, and then the child was out of school for President's Day, and I don't need any more out of school days. Okay, I'm about ready to pull my hair out. So, yes, let's keep them in school this week. That's all I'm looking for.
Okay, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. Well, and two, this is, I guess, if we got to have it, let's have it this week because, next week here in Memphis is the annual Mid-South Farm and Gin Show. And so this is just a quick reminder for those of you who are listening and you're within a reasonable driving distance of Memphis, that the Gin Show, and this will be the 73rd Farm and Gin Show, opens its doors the morning of February 28th and March 1st at the completely renovated Renaissance Convention Center in downtown Memphis. This year's show, I'm told, has more than 300 exhibitors, as well as the traditional ag update sessions with Joe Nicosia on cotton and Richard Brock on grains and economic policies. If you want more information about the show hours and certainly want to pre-register for the show, which is strongly encouraged, you can go online to farmandginshow.com. Cotton Grower will have a booth at the show as usual, and we'd love for you to stop by with us. That is, if you can find us in the booth.
Well, I know that we're booth number 4116, which is going to be right next door to the National Cotton Council's booth, if that means anything to y'all. So, yeah, we'd love for y'all to come see us. I'm looking at my long-term weather forecast. I think it's going to be a little warmer and a little sunnier towards most of next week. So it might be a rare good weather gin show weekend. And so, yeah, y'all get to Memphis and come hang out with us. But now our podcast sponsor, Vive Crop Protection, is back with another message of interest as the 2025 growing season begins to kick off. Our colleague and custom content manager, Hillary Wynn, recently visited with George Huckabee, Southern U.S. sales agronomist at Vive, and we'd like to share their conversation with you right now.
Hi, this is Hillary Wynn, custom content manager with Meister Media Worldwide, publisher of Cotton Grower Magazine. My guest today is George Huckabee, Southern U.S. sales agronomist at Vive Crop Protection. George, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Hillary. Thanks for having me on today, and I appreciate the time.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Vive?
Yes, so I've been with Vive a little over 4 years. I'm currently located in Austin, Texas. Prior to this, I've done about 2 to 3 other roles as agronomy with retail organizations and over the last 15 years, and I've covered mainly in southern, southeastern row crops, cotton, peanuts, and have really made that more my area I've worked in most of my career.
Now, George, nematodes have been a major topic of conversation for cotton growers this year. How can a grower tell if they have a nematode problem in their fields?
Well, the best way and the most definitive way is to actually just take a physical soil sample or nematode sample and then send that off to the lab. The lab can actually do a physical extraction where they actually pull the nematodes out of the soil sample, and they can figure out what species they are. They can figure out the population numbers, and they can figure out the threshold and find out if that number of nematodes in that sample are a problem. This sample typically needs to be done at the end of the season. That's when the numbers are the highest, and that's where the threshold calibration numbers are all calibrated to. Typically, as soon as the cotton's picked going out there, I mean, if I was going to pull a sample, I would like to have the cotton stalks chopped and mowed, but it doesn't have to happen, but it's easier for the sampler. But, as soon as that cotton comes off, I would get out and pull a sample. If we're talking about root knot nematodes, root knots, you can actually see the galls on the roots. So what you'd want to do is dig the roots up and be very careful by doing that. But, dig them up and actually look for the presence of what look like nodules on the roots, almost like they do on soybeans, but they're actually where the nematodes get into the root system. And you can see if you have them in there. But the best way to do it is by sending the sample off.
What can a grower do to stop nematodes from destroying their cotton yields?
What nematodes are hard to control just as how they are. But the way most growers do it is by using IPM. IPM stands for Integrated Pest Management, and it uses different methods of like culture control, crop rotation, plant cover crops that are non-host for nematodes. Just all the different aspects a grower can do on top of chemical controls to help control them. So I wouldn't rely on just one, but I would rely on all those together and work with your extension agents or your crop advisor, crop consultant, and figure out what's the best plan of action for you to control the nematodes and how can you use all these different attributes and different planning practices to do that.
Where can someone go to learn more about Vive's cotton solutions?
The best place to learn from Vive is on vivecrop.com /cotton. We have a lot of good information on our website. We have all the contact information for our territory sales managers that are across the South. My information is on there, and reach out to one of us. We're there to help. We can advise you. We can look at a field. We can make recommendations, and like I said, we've got good information on there, and we can help. Just go to www.vivecrop.com.
George, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, thanks Hillary and George for that segment, and to Vive Crop Protection for their support of the Cotton Companion podcast.
Well, Beck, as you know, the National Cotton Council held its 2025 annual meeting in Dallas over the past weekend. And we certainly appreciate the opportunity to attend so that we can stay up to date on the agronomic, economic, and policy issues that the council is preparing to tackle head on for the coming year. It's also the time when the council elects its new officers for the coming year. And coming up in just a few minutes, we're going to have a conversation with Patrick Johnson. Patrick is a cotton producer from Tunica, Mississippi, who was elected the new NCC Chairman for the coming year. He has a big task ahead of him this year as the council turns its attention to passage of a new and certainly long overdue farm bill. And we talked about some of those challenges in our discussion. And we're going to have that for you here in just a few minutes. But a couple of other important items came out of that meeting. And Beck, let's talk a little bit about some of them.
Yeah, I mean, no shortage of headlines coming out of that NCC annual meeting each year. And let's lead off, Jim, with the results of the council's annual early season planting intentions survey. So I'm just going to start off with the facts here. Based on that survey, the council is saying that U.S. cotton producers intend to plant 9.6 million acres this spring. That's down 14.5% from 2024. That includes upland intentions of 9.4 million acres. That's down 14.4% from 2024. And extra long staple intentions of only 158,000 acres, which is a 23.5% point decline. So based on those numbers and average abandonment rates, the NCC is projecting 7.8 million harvested acres with total projected cotton production of 13.9 million bales in 2025.
It's I think, opened some eyes at the meeting.
Open mind.
In terms of, I've gotten to the point where nothing surprises me anymore. But I have good faith in the numbers that the council came up with in their survey, and we'll talk about that a little bit more here in just a minute.
Yeah, nothing but faith that the council, does good work with this survey and very scientifically sound work, and I have no doubt that they are going to be close to correct when it's all said and done. But boy, if you're Cotton Grower Magazine, you want as many acres out there as you can possibly get in 9.6 upland and ELS. That's lower. Jim, I know you're going to get down into some of the more detailed numbers here, but boy, that's lower than what I tell people is kind of the traditional acceptable window for,
Right.
or not acceptable is the wrong word, but a good window for cotton. Normally we're in between 10 million and 12 million in a normal year. If you got higher than 12 million, that's above average. If you got lower than 10 million, that's below average and a little worrisome. And that's sounds like what the council's projecting this year.
Yeah, well, and I think we're into some exceptional times right now for a number of reasons. But let's kind of break their survey results down by region, because I'm sure people are going to be a little bit more interested in what's going to happen in their areas. So let's start over in the Southeast. where they're projecting a 19.3% decline in the regional cotton acreage. That's going to down to like 1.9 million acres, with all of the states in the Southeast showing reductions ranging from 8.8% in Virginia up to 26.9% in North Carolina. Now, the interesting point in this, of course, Georgia is always right in the center of the Southeast. It's where the most of the cotton acres lie. It's traditionally somewhere right around a million, just over a million acres in that traditional cotton peanut rotation. This year, the survey is saying that Georgia growers expect to reduce acreage by 21.5% down to 864,000 acres. That is the lowest level of Georgia cotton acreage since 1993, if these projections hold. They're seeing more increases from growers in corn, soybeans, wheat, sorghum, and peanuts to sort of make up some of the differences. Over in the Mid-South, growers are intending to plant 1.8 million acres. That's down 8.2% from previous year. Again, all of the states are showing reductions, primarily due to anticipated increases in corn, peanuts, and other crops. And those other crops include some soybean growth in acres in some of the areas. In the Southwest, growers are intended to plant 5.6 million acres. That's 14.5% decline, despite an anticipated 12.5% increase in Kansas cotton acres. Texas acreage is expected to drop 15.8% as growers potentially shift to sorghum, corn, wheat, peanuts, and other crops. Out west, upland cotton acres expected to drop 12.3% to 138,000 acres, while ELS acres drop overall to 158,000 acres. That's down 23.5%. Primary reasons: water availability and other crops as options. So, some interesting numbers from the survey.
Yeah, like we said, excuse my voice, y'all. I know I sound incredibly sickly. I'm not. I just got a scratchy throat. So, but yeah, Jim. Obviously, the first thing we think about when we see a projection like that is our own number that we projected in January. For context, everyone, that we were projecting just over 11 million acres, 11.04, I believe, Jim, if I have that correct.
That's correct.
Million acres upland in DLS in the U.S. in 2025. So our numbers fell a little bit more within that average range that I mentioned earlier, that I kind of only exists in between my ears when I think about an average acreage year. About 10.5 to 12 million is an average window, and we were right in the middle of that. And I was just looking at the story that you wrote, Jim, before we recorded, and looking at your state by state numbers, and they were just a little closer to what would be average for a lot of these states, particularly the bigger producing states. I believe we were projecting 1.1 million out of Georgia, as much as 6 million maybe out of Texas, and 500,000 out of, I always pay attention to Mississippi because that's where I'm from, 500,000 acres out of Mississippi. And it just sounds like the council came in well under those in a lot of those normally larger acreage producing states. And I have to think, for context for everyone, we do our survey in September, October.
We do ours mid-November, right at the tail end of harvest.
Okay.
Because we compile our numbers early December in order to get them into the January issue.
Yeah. And, the council does theirs maybe a month or so later, a little bit later than that, when they are going to the field or reaching out to the market to ask for input from their growers. And the only thing I can think is that competitive crop pricing improved in the interim in between when we were doing our survey and when they were doing theirs. I mean, is that what you feel?
Yeah, I would say pricing has an awful lot to do with it, because when we put our survey numbers together, cotton, even though the prices weren't great, they were trading in that 72 to 75 cent range. The council survey period, I think, starts like mid-January and goes through early February. And in that period of time, all the prices dropped into the 66 to 68 cent range. Uh, that's a, you know, early 70s is a hard of enough pill for a lot of growers to work with. But when you drop below 70 cents, it gets a little more difficult, uh, particularly when, corn and soybeans and grains and things like that. Nobody's numbers look great right now. And it may just come down to what can I grow that I can grow with the least amount of expense. Uh, so, we'll see how all this works out, obviously, but we'll watch and see. USDA still has their number to come out. It's due at the end of March. Uh, who knows what the market situation will be like at that point. I will not be surprised if their number falls somewhere between the council's number and our number. Uh, I mean, realistically, if you start doing the math, there there's 1.4 million acres between the council's number and our numbers. If you spread that over 17 states, not that not that much, in kind
Those are
sounds like a
rare.
lot. Sounds like a lot, but in the big scheme of things, it's relatively acceptable number.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, between their number and our number, we're talking about a 10%
Right.
percentage point difference in the projection. So, I mean, not a huge gap. I will say it's a bigger gap than normal. We typically come in pretty close to what the council projects just a month later. So, yeah, it
Right.
just indicates some competitive crop pricing movement in that window between our surveys.
Right. And I think it's also a definite reflection of how volatile this market is right
Yeah.
now. I think at the Beltwide back in first to early January, it's like I don't think anybody knew exactly at that point what they were going to do. I'm still not convinced that a lot of growers have made final decisions. So, we'll sort of sit back and see where all this falls at this point. Uh, One thing we can say for certain, everybody's getting good soil moisture right now
Yeah.
from one end of the belt to the other. Everybody's got moisture for once. So that's going to help.
Yeah, Jim, in addition to the acreage survey, there's always other headlines that come out and there's political headlines that come out of that meeting. So can you talk a little bit more about maybe some of the other appointments that happened during the annual meeting?
Sure. I think, the one thing about this meeting that is unlike any other meeting in the industry, it's a very politically charged meeting. It's one of the primary focuses uh, for the council to kind of get their marching orders for the year. And it kind of came at a point, obviously, when with Cotton's involvement in getting the economic aid package and the disaster aid package passed back in December, and now focus moves to the Farm Bill. Uh, you got a new Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, who was confirmed the day before the meeting started last week. And the council did a good job. Their Washington staff, Robbie Minnick, I'll give Robbie a shout out on this. Done a great job in getting some really top level folks to the meeting to for panel discussions and other discussions with all of the delegates, including the top staff members from from Senator John Bozeman, who is the chairman of the Senate Ag Committee, the top person with Senator or Representative G.T. Thompson, who heads up the House Ag Committee, as well as the top staff members from the ranking members of Senator Amy Klobuchar and Representative Angie Craig. Were all there to kind of talk about the process and where things are in Washington. In addition, as sort of a surprise, Representative Thompson actually came to the meeting on Saturday and sat down for sort of a fireside chat discussion, talking a little bit about the next steps and things like that. One of the things in particular that he did mention is new Secretary Rollins on her first day on the job shortly after confirmation sat down and signed an order basically saying all the payments for this economic aid package that was passed in December, those payments are scheduled, need to begin by mid-March. So the order's out there to get these payments out into the field as quickly as possible. So it was, always from that perspective, it's always interesting because you never know what you're going to hear in those sessions. Now, of course, always there are a number of other awards and other honors that are presented during the meeting sessions. We won't go into detail on those. We got those details, including the full slate of new officers. Those are up on our website at cottongrower.com. If they're not there today, they will certainly be up over by the end of this week.
So, Jim, I just wanted to say before we moved away from Brooke Rollins' appointment, I know that in President Trump's first term, Sonny Perdue was our
Correct.
ag secretary, easy for me to say. And Sonny was a little bit more well-known, I felt like. I mean, especially in our industry, I mean, he was a Georgia guy and people were just familiar with him. Rollins, to me, is a new name, and maybe some of our listeners who are a little bit more politically plugged in familiar with her, but I was not. So I went and did the intrepid journalism that I am known for, which is to say I Googled her.
Right.
I know that I was looking for her ag background, where I'm going with this. Born in 1972 in Glen Rose, Texas. Her mother, Helen Kerwin, was elected. She was in the Texas House of Representatives, actually just here recently, but she herself was raised on a farm there in Glen Rose, which is just south of Dallas. And she attended Texas A&M, where she graduated cum laude with a Bachelor of Science in Ag Development in 94. So she's a farm kid who studied farm stuff. So to me, that passes the bar.
Yeah.
So excited to see what she's going to have in store.
Yeah. Well, just, as another note on there, Representative Angie Craig, who is the, one of the ranking members on the House Ag Committee, is from Minnesota. And generally you would think, okay, that's, going to have a Midwest tilt to it. She was actually born in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and went to school at Memphis State, or University of Memphis now. So she got some pretty good exposure in her early days to Southern agriculture as well. So it's, the council's very pleased with the staff and the people they have in place to work with on Farm Bill this year. And hopefully the good news on that, as Representative Thompson said, it's not a complete start over on the bill. That there's some good platforms and programs that are already in place. It's just a matter of getting everything worked out and getting it funded in the midst of everything else that's going on. So his goal, and he would love to see a farm bill in place by mid-year, the latest. So we'll all keep our fingers crossed and hope that they can make that work. So anyway, as I mentioned earlier, I had the opportunity to visit with Patrick Johnson. He's the 2025 NCC Chairman, literally between meeting sessions. We pulled him out of one meeting and sat down and visited for a few minutes and just sent him right back into another session because it's a busy, busy time. Patrick is a cotton producer from Tunica, Mississippi, which is just down the road a short way from where Beck and I both live. And Beck, for your perspective, he's an Ole Miss grad.
Yep, Harvard to the south.
No doubt. So anyway, Patrick's a very, very sharp guy. He's well aware of the job ahead for the coming year. I think he's in a good position to be of great help to the cotton industry. So let's take a listen to that conversation right now. Well, today we're coming to you from Dallas and the National Cotton Council's annual meeting, and I'm happy to be visiting with Patrick Johnson, who is the newly elected NCC Chairman for 2025. Patrick, thanks for taking a few moments out of your very busy schedule this weekend. This is likely the start of a whirlwind year for you.
Yeah, I expect it will be, Jim, but I'm happy to sit down and visit for a few minutes.
Okay. Well, first of all, let's talk a little bit of background. You're a cotton producer, I believe, from Tunica, Mississippi, just down the road from where I live. Tell me a little bit about yourself, about your farming operation.
So I'm a fourth generation farmer there in Tunica. I grew up on the farm and went to college at Ole Miss. And when I graduated, got married, and my wife Emily and I have been back in Tunica farming with I started out with my grandfather and my father, and my father and I are still involved, and came back in 1997 was my first crop.
Okay. Well, tell me about the crop. Obviously, you grow cotton.
Yes.
What else?
When I was growing up on the farm, we were basically a cotton and soybean operation. And in the 90s, my father and my uncle got into the rice business. So now we grow cotton, corn, rice, and soybeans on the farm.
Okay. How many acres total?
It's close to 10,000 acres total, and we'll have probably 2,500 to 3,500 acres of cotton, about the same in rice, and the rest will be filled in with soybeans.
Okay. So tell me, how did you get involved with the council? What interested you in leadership? What types of positions have you held?
Yeah. Well, I think my initial involvement in industry organizations probably started with Delta Council.
Okay.
And from there, that grew into involvement with the Cotton Council as a producer delegate, and I'm also involved in my county farm bureau. So I think that really looking at the people who were dedicating their time to serve in those organizations attracted me to, I was impressed by them, had a lot of respect for the men and women who were doing that, and it led to a desire. I wanted to be around and around them and see what I could learn.
Okay. That's great. Positions within the council that you've had so far? You said producer delegate.
So I served as a producer delegate for quite a while. In 2007, I was able to go through the NCC's Cotton Leadership Program, and that was a really special opportunity. And so I did that and served as on the environmental task force, and then chaired the NCC's environmental task force for a few years, and was also involved in the producer segment, the American Cotton Producers, representing Mississippi, and chaired the ACP Farm Policy Task Force over the past few years, and then last year I served as vice chairman.
Okay. Well, the work on the Farm Policy Task Force, I'm sure, has been a really good background considering everything that we're kind of facing.
Absolutely.
At this point, I think there's certainly no secret that cotton industry and agriculture in general is, probably not as healthy as it's ever been in the past. A lot of challenges out there impacting ag. In the past few months, we've seen some progress, obviously, in terms of the economic package and the disaster relief packages. But that's just a start. There's obviously a lot to be done at this point.
Absolutely. So, I think that the economic conditions for cotton farmers have been degrading over the last several years, and certainly that all kind of began to come together in 2024, and we couldn't be more grateful that we were able to get some economic assistance at the end of the year, but that really doesn't change the fundamental outlook for cotton production. We're still in a very difficult spot, and we need something that would provide more long-term stability.
Well, I know a lot has been done over the past year in particular. But now we've got a new administration. We've got some new leadership on the House and Senate Ag committees. We've got new leadership at USDA. Where do we start at this point? Who do we start with?
Well, we've been blessed to have Chairman Thompson from the House Ag Committee here with us at our meeting, and he certainly is encouraging to hear him talk about the just the new leadership, as you said, on the committees, and we've just got to continue to communicate with them, and hopefully we can capture some of the bandwidth up there in D.C. and get a farm bill passed this year.
Yeah. Well, that's obviously it's one of the heavy lifts, obviously that's there ahead of us right now. What would you like your fellow producers and other folks in the industry to know about the council's plans heading into next year?
Well, I think if there's one thing I would want people to be, if there's something that I would really want people to understand, is everybody involved in the Cotton Council, the membership, the leadership, everybody is well aware of how difficult this situation is, and they are. I believe that as a group we're up to the task, and we're working hard on the growers' behalf and for all of the segments, because when producers struggle, that spreads throughout the industry.
Yeah, definitely. And we know that obviously every cotton field and every, like you said, every producer important to the local community and to their local industries and economy. But cotton is, of course, part of a much bigger global industry, and we know there are some threats out there globally. What do you see that the biggest threats that we have to deal with this year?
I think that they're really the same threats that we've been facing over many years, and as my predecessor Joe Nicosia often reminded us last year, if you don't compete, you're going to get beat.
Right.
And it's competition with man-made fiber is a huge issue that we have got to do all we can to tell the positive story about cotton and its benefits for health and the environment compared to man-made fiber, and capture some of that market back. And then within the cotton worldwide cotton industry, there's strong competition from other growths around the world, and so we've got to make sure that we are meeting the customer's needs and that we're operating as efficiently as we can as an industry.
That's great. That's great. Well, obviously you've got a strong and very committed organization behind you. You said they're there to back you up, there to back up the whole industry. It's going to be an important year for cotton, and I think for ag in general, and I'm sure that you and the council are going to be up to the task. So thanks for taking time between meetings. It's been kind of a hectic day around here. I look forward to working with you this year and touching base maybe with you throughout the coming year.
Great, Jim. Thanks for the opportunity to visit with you this afternoon.
Thanks, Patrick. Appreciate it.
Well, all right, Jim, that's going to do it for this episode of the Cotton Companion podcast. We want to say thanks again to new NCC Chairman Patrick Johnson for visiting with Jim and about tackling the challenges ahead for the cotton industry and all of agriculture this year. And a big thanks, too, to Vive Crop Protection for their continuing sponsorship of the podcast, and to George Huckabee for participating in this episode's special segment with Vive. And as always, we want to say thank you, dear listener, for joining us, for your continued support. As always, we hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if you did like what you've heard, please be sure to spread the word and tell your farming friends and neighbors about the Cotton Companion podcast. Here's where and how they can find us.
You can find the Cotton Companion in 3 easy ways. First, go to cottongrower.com/companion, or simply click the podcast tab at the top of the homepage. Second, subscribe to our channel on iTunes or wherever you find your podcasts these days. And 3, sign up for our weekly e-newsletter, the Cotton Grower e-News, that's delivered to your email inbox every Tuesday morning. You can do that by going to cottongrower.com/subscribe. Also, be sure to follow Cotton Grower on social media. We are at Cotton Grower Mag on Twitter. And on Facebook, you'll find us by searching for Cotton Grower Magazine.
Cotton Companion Podcast is produced twice monthly by Tyler Hatch and Kim Henderson, our talented colleagues, the world headquarters for Meister Media Worldwide in lovely Willoughby, Ohio. I'm Jim Stedman, he's Beck Barnes, and we'll be back with you in a few weeks with the next episode of the Cotton Companion. Until then, stay warm, stay safe, and we hope to see you at the Farm and Gin Show.
'Cause God made me a farmer. Yeah, he works and he works and he works and he works all